Have you ever felt a cold so deep that it didn't just freeze your skin, but it seemed to freeze your very soul? Imagine sitting on a park bench, invisible to the world, watching your breath turn to ice as the temperature drops to a deadly -10 degrees. You have no home, no money, and worst of all, absolutely no hope left. That is exactly where our story begins today. But stay with me, because just when darkness seemed absolute, two strangers appeared out of the mist, a man with the world in his pocket, and a little girl who hadn't spoken a word in years. What happened next didn't just save a life, it healed 3 broken hearts in a way no one saw coming. Before we dive into this incredible journey of survival and destiny, please take a moment to hit that like button if you believe in the power of kindness, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story that touches the heart. Now, let's step into the cold. The city of Chicago was in the grip of a historic freeze. The wind howled through the canyons of steel and glass, carrying with it a bite that felt like 1,000 needles. For the commuters rushing toward the train stations, wrapped in wool and down, the cold was an inconvenience. But for Elara, it was a death sentence. Elara was 34 years old, though the last 2 years of living on the streets had aged her face a decade. She sat huddled on a metal bench in Millennium Park, her body wrapped in layers of mismatched, scavenged clothing that offered little protection against the dropping mercury. The weather app on a passerby's phone had flashed -10 degrees Celsius, a number that terrified her. Elara wasn't always like this. Once, she had a warm apartment, a job as a piano teacher, and a fiancé. But life is fragile. A catastrophic car accident took her fiancé and left her with debilitating injuries. The medical bills piled up, her ability to play the piano vanished with the nerve damage in her hands, and slowly, piece by piece, her life dismantled itself until she was here, shivering violently, clutching a faded photograph of a life that felt like a dream. As the sun set, the city emptied. The shelters were full, she had checked 3 of them, only to be turned away by overworked staff with apologetic eyes. She had nowhere to go. Her extremities were beginning to go numb, a dangerous sign of hypothermia setting in. Her mind began to play tricks on her, telling her it was warm, urging her to close her eyes and sleep. She knew if she closed her eyes now, she would never open them again. Just a few hundred yards away, a sleek, black limousine idled at a red light. Inside sat Julian Thorne, a billionaire real estate mogul known for his ruthless business tactics and his icy demeanor. But the ice in Julian's heart was born of grief, not malice. Next to him sat his 7-year-old daughter, Maya. Maya was beautiful, with large, expressive eyes, but those eyes were hollow. Since the passing of her mother 3 years ago, Maya had fallen into a profound silence. She hadn't uttered a single word, not a cry, not a whisper. Julian had hired the best doctors in the world, traveled to specialists in Switzerland and Japan, but nothing worked. Maya was locked inside a fortress of grief, and Julian, despite his billions, was powerless to break her out. The traffic light remained red. Maya looked out the tinted window, her gaze drifting aimlessly until it locked onto the bench. She saw the lump of rags shivering against the metal. She saw Elara. For reasons Julian would never understand, Maya suddenly unbuckled her seatbelt. The sound startled Julian. Before he could stop her, Maya opened the heavy door of the limousine and stepped out into the biting wind. "Maya! What are you doing?" Julian shouted, panic rising in his chest as the freezing air rushed into the warm car. He scrambled out after her, his expensive Italian coat barely buttoned. Maya didn't run. She walked with purpose toward the bench. Julian caught up to her just as she reached the shivering woman. He reached out to grab his daughter's shoulder, ready to pull her back to safety, ready to shield her from the harsh reality of the street. "Maya, get back in the car, it's freezing," he commanded. But Maya stood frozen, staring at Elara. Elara looked up, her vision blurry. She saw a little girl in a velvet coat standing like an angel in the snow, and a tall, terrified man behind her. Elara tried to speak, to tell them to go away, but her jaw was locked from the cold. All she could do was hum. It was an involuntary reaction, a way to self-soothe. She hummed the melody of an old lullaby her fiancé used to sing, a simple, melancholic tune. The sound of the humming cut through the wind. Julian stiffened. He recognized the tune. It was the same lullaby his late wife used to sing to Maya when she was a baby. He looked down at his daughter and saw something he hadn't seen in 3 years. Tears were streaming down Maya's frozen cheeks. Slowly, Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out her gloves. She took Elara's frozen, purple hands and placed the warm, cashmere gloves over them. Then, she did the unthinkable. Maya opened her mouth, her voice cracking from disuse, and whispered, "Mama's song." Julian dropped to his knees in the snow, disregarding his suit, disregarding the cold. He stared at his daughter, his heart pounding in his ears. "Maya," he choked out. "You spoke." Maya didn't look at her father, she looked at Elara. "She's cold, Daddy," Maya said, her voice stronger this time. "She's freezing." The wall of silence had crumbled, brought down not by expensive therapy, but by the humming of a dying woman in the snow. Julian looked at Elara, really seeing her for the first time. He saw the pain, the dignity, and the sheer desperation in her eyes. He realized that this stranger had just given him back his daughter. "Get her up," Julian ordered his driver, who had rushed over with an umbrella. "Help me get her into the car." Elara was too weak to protest. She felt strong arms lift her, and moments later, she was enveloped in the scent of leather and warmth. As the heat of the car began to thaw her frozen limbs, the pain was excruciating, but the little girl held her hand the entire way, anchoring her to the world of the living. They didn't take her to a hospital immediately. Julian feared the bureaucracy would take too long. He took her to his estate, summoned his private medical team, and watched over the stranger who had saved his family while freezing to death. Over the next few days, Elara drifted in and out of consciousness. When she finally woke fully, she was in a bed softer than anything she had ever known. Maya was sitting in a chair next to the bed, drawing in a sketchbook. "You're awake," Maya said, a small smile playing on her lips. Julian entered the room a moment later, looking less like a titan of industry and more like a humble father. He sat on the edge of the bed and told Elara what had happened. He told her about Maya's silence, about the song, and about the miracle in the snow. "You saved my daughter," Julian said, his voice thick with emotion. "I can never repay that. But I can try." Elara shook her head weakly. "I didn't do anything. I was just waiting to end." "And yet, you began something new," Julian insisted. As Elara recovered, she didn't just stay as a guest. She began to play the piano in the grand hall. Her hands, though damaged, remembered the theory, and she began to teach Maya. It turned out Elara couldn't play complex concertos anymore, but she was a gifted teacher. Music filled the silent halls of the Thorne estate for the first time in years. Julian learned about Elara's past, her fiancé, and her fall from grace. He was furious at a system that could let someone so gentle fall so far. But anger wasn't enough, action was needed. Julian didn't just give Elara money. He gave her a purpose. He discovered that before her music career, Elara had studied acoustics and sound therapy. He offered her a position leading a new foundation he wanted to start, a center for children with trauma, using music and art to help them find their voices, just as Elara had helped Maya. The transformation was slow but beautiful. Elara regained her strength and her confidence. She cut her hair, wore clothes that fit, and stood tall. But the most profound change was in Julian. The cold billionaire melted away. He began to spend his evenings listening to Elara and Maya play duets, one on the piano, the other on the violin. The house, once a museum of grief, became a home again. 6 months later, on a warm summer evening, Elara stood on a stage. It was the opening gala of the Maya Foundation. Hundreds of Chicago's elite were there. Julian stood at the podium and introduced her, not as a charity case he had rescued, but as the woman who had rescued him. "We often walk past people in the street," Julian told the hushed crowd. "We see them as problems to be solved, or eyesores to be ignored. But that night, at -10 degrees, I didn't find a homeless woman. I found the key to my daughter's heart." I found a hero. Elara stepped up to the microphone. She looked out at the sea of faces, then down at Maya, who was beaming in the front row. I was freezing alone, Elara said, her voice steady and clear. I thought my life was over. But kindness is a strange thing. It acts like a mirror. When you give it, it reflects back to you. Maya gave me her gloves, and in doing so, she gave me my life back. I gave her a song, and she gave me a future. We are never truly alone, as long as we are willing to stop, look, and listen to the person shivering next to us. The applause was thunderous, but Elara didn't hear the clapping. She only heard the laughter of a little girl who was silent no more. The story of the woman in the snow and the billionaire's daughter became a legend in the city, a reminder that hope often appears in the most unlikely forms. The video isn't over yet, because the most important part is the message we take away. Elara's story teaches us that everyone has a story, a talent, and a spark within them, even when they are at their lowest point. It teaches us that miracles don't always come with lightning and thunder. Sometimes, they come in the form of a child's intuition and a hummed lullaby. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many people do we pass by every day who hold the key to our own healing? How many miracles do we miss because we are too busy looking at our phones instead of looking into people's eyes? If this story warmed your heart, if it made you appreciate the roof over your head and the loved ones in your life, please, do me a favor. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that hope is never truly lost. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we have so many more stories of humanity, resilience, and love to share with you. And before you go, comment down below, I believe in miracles. Let's fill the comments section with positivity. Thank you for watching, and remember, no matter how cold the winter gets, spring is always just around the corner. Stay kind, and I'll see you in the next video.